Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3000, 3975. 3975. Yeah. Today's date is 1st of April. Yeah, 1st of April, 2026. It's been almost like morning at 7:36 a.m. Oh boy. Okay. Beard is too much. I have to beard. All right. So should we jump into the question? Let's go. Okay. So question is, what does a minimum high quality learning government school sorry what does a minimum high quality learning government look like for every school in India, and how consistently is that standard is being enforced across state and district? Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is Indian education system. Okay, this question is actually about Indian education system. And why am I asking this question to myself? In future, I want to become a education minister of India, and future. Okay, and basically it's this thing. Before that, I wanted to aware of everything regarding about education system and how do I supposed to do this and that and that. All right. Now let's jump back to the question. The question says that I'm gonna simplify this question. What are the basic requirement for school, and is the government making sure that requirement is actually fulfilling or not? Okay, let's talk about that. What is the kind of like simply essential requirement for school? um there are so many things are kind of like really essential. Okay, first of all is that key a classroom. Okay, yeah. uh, then electricity. Okay, at least a fan. Okay, in every classroom should supposed to be have a fan. Okay, then benches probably. Okay, yeah. Then toilet, girls toilet, boys toilet, essential. Okay, then um, then basically playground. Okay, and then teachers. Okay, teachers are really essential. Okay, not just one teacher, like let's just say for every 30 student one teacher. So if the capacity of 300 student, that means 10 teacher. Okay, and then these are kind of like a basic essential thing. Okay, you can add even more essential thing too by like internet or computer or things and that. Now basically is the thing, those are very essential requirement for school. Does Indian government are kind of like a try to make sure that those requirement are fulfilled? Yeah, they are trying. Okay, then like are those schools are equipped with all those essential things? Not. Why not? The problem is that key like a priority. Okay, important thing, priority. Yes, government want to build school. Yes, government want to kind of like a something things and that. But the problem is that na ki there are almost like a 1.4 million school in India, and most of the schools are actually in a rural area and things and that. Now in the city things are might be really good, like you will get kind of like all the requirement kind of like a things and that. Okay, but basically is this thing, when you went to the rural area then things might be very crazy over there. You might not get a kind of like a proper requirement for the schools and things and that. But why is that? Why does school doesn't really get that much requirement? The problem is that na ki is not about money. They have a money, government have a lot of amount of money too. The problem is that कि basically is this thing, any government project should supposed to be handled or should supposed to be do any kind of like upgrades, they really required a lot of amount of kind of like assembly permission from this, from that, from that and that and that. Okay, and do lot of paperwork. Example, let's just say this is my house, like it's not my house, it's my father's house. Okay, but okay, this is my house. Okay, yeah, and the pipe is leaking. So what is actually my job? My job is to fix that pipe, right? So I will go to the kind of like a find any kind of like a contractor or any kind of like a plumber who kind of like say the pipe is leaking. I will kind of like bring that plumber to my home. He will kind of like fix the pipe. Okay, I will kind of like give the money, things and that and that. Now this is the kind of like actually happen when you actually own your property. But what if is this thing, this is not my home, like let's just say this is a kind of like a government hostel, and this is the broken pipe that I am seeing. So what do I supposed to do now? Well, basically this thing, let's just say this is a kind of like a government hostel, I am the just a student. So what do I supposed to do is that I will kind of like tell my warden that this is a pipe is actually leaking. Now the warden will kind of like look at the pipe. Okay, it's a leaking and things and that and that. Now he will decide that will he supposed to fix that pipe or not. Why? Let me tell you one thing. Because of this pipe is actually leaking in my house, there is a problem cause. The water is shortages and things and that and that. I am facing that consequences. So when I face the consequences, it's my responsibility to fix that problem. Okay, because it affect me. But what if the government hospital, government kind of like a hostel, and I see this leaking pipe and I tell my warden, then warden will not gonna fix that thing, or maybe he will try to delay that stuff. Why? Because it's not really essential. The government hostel is not his home. Okay, so basically what he could supposed to do is that he might gonna delay and things and that and that. But basically it caused problem it caused problem to me. So like basically I am the student in the hostel, so what do I supposed to do now? Okay, well, I also not really take care of that thing. Like basically the pipe is broken, my responsibility is done, I tell my warden, that's it. If I kind of like a water is not coming into my bathroom, what do I supposed to do is that find something else. Like basically is this thing like when you are kind of like surrounded with a kind of like somebody in a government thing or that and that, specifically in Indian context point of perspective. Okay, you are expecting to be a kind of like a broken. Okay, and this is always gonna happen. Like if you went to the government school, college, everywhere, you went to the bathroom, you already expecting that the door will not gonna working, or maybe water will not gonna working, or things and that and that. Okay, so you will not try to fix that thing, you will try to kind of like do your business and that's it. Okay, you will not gonna take care of that okay, the water is actually working or not, I don't really care at all. Okay, so probably what should you supposed to do? You have a kind of like a business to do, and basically is this thing that basically you found a kind of like you went to kind of like a government school, and there is a kind of like a toilet, and the water is not actually working. What should you supposed to do? You do not put the water, like you just do your business, that's it. Okay, that's my responsibility. What could I supposed to do? And this is what actually happened. It's a kind of like a mentality. Is this thing that we are trying to not care government property that much seriously. If it is broken, let them broken. What do I supposed to do? Like I already did my part. I tell my warden that this pipe is actually leaking. Now why does warden is not fixing the leaking pipe? The problem is that this is a pipe leaking. Okay, now basically this thing, think about warden point of perspective. In like let me tell you one thing, this is my home, this is the pipe is actually leaking, I see the problem. What do I supposed to do? Go to the plumber, get the plumber here, fix that problem, right? But in government school or government college, you do not have to do that thing. Like you have to file the paperwork. Okay, you have to file the paperwork that this is a hostel and things, and this is a pipe is actually kind of like something is this thing not working or leaking and things and that and that. Now some people are kind of like do the corruption. Like let me tell you one thing, let's just say this is the only one pipe is kind of like a broken. So what kind of like a somebody warden will gonna do? The three pipes are leaking. Actually there is a one pipe, but they kind of like I say three pipe are leaking. Okay, yeah. So basically three pipes are leaking. So basically a one pipe kind of like a required almost like a 200 rupees to fix. So let's just say almost like a 600 rupees for fixing three pipes. Okay, yeah. So 600 rupees he asked for government. Now government will kind of like a simply okay, there are kind of like a pipes are leaking and things, and government will kind of like a simply verify. Okay, yeah. So it will another time to and kind of like a verify. Okay, if it not gonna verify, they will kind of like give 600 rupees to the warden. Now in the warden, what we're gonna do is that he will try to fix that pipe, and 400 rupees is in the pocket. So he do the corruption, right? So this is a kind of like a simply red tape or kind of like a corruption is actually happening in government. It is a lot. Okay, and sometimes what will gonna happen, he took the money 600 rupees and he might not fix the pipe, or maybe he fixed the pipe with a very low quality or things and that. So this is a kind of like a problem. Okay, yeah. Now I mentioned, now let's talk about as a government point of perspective too. Okay, yeah. Now government point of perspective is this thing that key fixing the pipe is not really that important. Yeah, like let me tell you one thing. From government point of perspective, what does is they are kind of like a bit more focus on building bigger schools and things and that, but they are not really focused on fixing pipes. Why? Because they don't really get any kind of like incentive for that. Okay, like basically most of the kind of like a funding is actually came from state government or political party and things and that, and what they will kind of like assembly like a kind of like a promote themselves, like a, if they are like a basically is this thing, I am a kind of like a something the stand in the election or state government, and I have to tell the people na ki what I did. So if I'm kind of like a tell them that I fixed this pipe of that hostel, is not kind of like a really good sentence to say. Like you have to kind of like say I built this school and things and that. Okay, so basically this thing, fancy and shiny stuff is kind of like a sell a lot, but fixing the broken pipe is not selling properly. Okay, yeah. So this is kind of like a political kind of like a things actually also happen to. Another thing is that ki, like there are a lot of stuff. Okay, yeah. So basically this thing, that's why in government things are happen very slow. Everything is actually happen slow. Fixing the pipe slow. Probably it will gonna take a month to kind of like a fix that pipe and things and that. Okay, yeah. So this is the kind of like a problem. So that's why most of the kind of like schools doesn't really have any necessary thing, but in the paperwork they kind of like have, okay, in my school we have a kind of like assembly the 2 bathroom which has a completely door seal and kind of like assembly the water is actually working and things like that. On the paperwork everything is actually clean, but when you went to the ground reality, oh my god, like reality and paperwork is actually far away from this thing. Now why is that? Why is kind of like a thing is, why is that? Because it's a very small corruption, a very small corruption. Okay, or kind of like a some mistake or things and that. Now what is actually small corruption? Okay, so basically this thing, people are not try to do big corruption, but taking a small corruption would be kind of like something just very easy to do it and very hard to get, very hard to find. Okay, yeah. Let me tell you one thing, if I did a corruption of kind of like a $1 million, I might gonna found very easily and probably, yeah. But if I kind of like do the corruption of 100 rupees or 200 rupees, then that corruption doesn't really become a kind of like a get that much limelight. And another thing is that it's a very tiny thing and it's not even called a corruption. It's kind of like a things that are just a by mistake and things and that. Okay, yeah. So this is what it is. This is what kind of like a thing is. Another problem is that let me tell you, 1.4 million schools. 1.4 million is a very huge number, by the way, very huge number. Okay, yeah. And if government are trying to fix 1.4 million schools problem, it will gonna take them forever to do it, because it's never gonna happen. The problem is that there are so many kind of like schools are actually exist that student is not able to have their own things and that. It's a kind of like a thing is that it's kind of like a cycle it create. Let me tell you the cycle. A student are not expecting a good toilet because they already experience what kind of like assembly toilet that they get in previous. Okay, so they are not kind of like expecting that ki will they kind of like get very good quality of toilet. They are not actually expecting. When the student is not actually expecting, they will not gonna file the report to the school or things and that. Probably maybe 1 or 2% might gonna kind of like say this thing, okay, this kind of like a toilet is not actually working and things and that, but very less amount of people. Okay, yeah. Now basically because of they file the report, and basically the school will kind of like implement, takes even more time. Okay, takes even more time. Okay, yeah. Now it takes even more time to do this thing. There is a kind of like a lot of corruption and things and that it kind of like even more slow things actually happen to kind of like implement. Okay, yeah. So let me tell you one thing. One particular person find that the toilet is not actually working. He filed the report, and implementation happened after an year. After an year. After an year. Literally not a day. After an year, by the way. Okay, yeah. Why? Because fixing a toilet is not that much essential thing. So when it's not essential thing, why does government will try to fix that thing? And not just the government, by the way, a kind of like an entire structure of government. Okay, because a lot of paperwork and things and that. Lot of stuff to do. Okay, yeah. And things and that. And because of it takes so much amount of time, the person who really required most, he will not gonna, he try to, like he will not kind of like somebody, he just forget that okay, just don't expect anything from government, just let it go. Okay, so that student will not gonna expect anything at all. And when the student is not actually expecting, then the improvement will happen even slow and things and that. That is a kind of like a bigger problem. So how do we supposed to be fix the problem? What exactly is this thing? Okay, so basically is this thing, the bigger problem is that key schools, oh yeah, or paperwork or government bodies or things and that, right? But this problem never really occurred in a city. Why does that? Because in the city there are a lot of people are actually there. Okay, yeah. So when there is a lot of people, there is a lot of responsibility, and when there is a lot of responsibility, there is a kind of like a lot of people who kind of like fix that responsibility. So you might not found that kind of like a problem in city, but in village you might found a lot. So what kind of like a solution do we have for that thing? Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing, if I'm gonna say this thing that we should supposed to be kind of like assembly that make sure that they were kind of like make evidence based or things and that like basically like a teacher should supposed to be kind of like take a photo of the kind of like a perfect toilet, they are working very nice and things and that, take a photo, upload that photo in server and go, and then government will kind of like send the fund money and things and that. Does it actually happen? It creates more paperwork. Yeah, it does not like a stop, it creates more paperwork. And when it kind of like creates more paperwork, it is delay even more. Okay, yeah. So what exactly is this thing? How do I supposed to kind of like fix that stuff? Okay, yeah. So I am not really focused on kind of like somebody fixing the school. I'm actually kind of like somebody focus on shifting student from school to Gurukul. Now what is actually Gurukul? Now Gurukul is a kind of like a place where student will live there, eat there, sleep there, learn together, like play together, things and that. Okay, yeah. Student will not gonna go home. Student will stay there and kind of like learn everything, do everything over there and things and that. Okay, yeah. Now let me tell you one thing. Why is that thing and that? First of all, is that there is a kind of like a problem with the school. Okay, yeah. So even if the school are actually provided with all the necessary things, okay, yeah, like electricity, perfect toilet and things and that, even after government provide everything, the student will not gonna like, it does not really ensure that student will kind of like get the quality of education, or they will kind of like become a kind like, what exactly is this thing? The government actually provide things. Okay, let's just say government actually providing something, a school, better classroom, better toilet and things and that. Okay, yeah. So government are providing so many things, so at least government are actually expecting something now. Okay, yeah. And what exactly they are expecting? They are expecting that I put that much amount of effort in this particular student to kind of like become better and things and that. Okay, yeah. but those student will not gonna implement that much better, or those are student will not kind of like impact a lot, or those student are became like a liability. They will not become asset for the country and things like that. Asset means what? Like they didn't really get a job or things or that, or their personal development is kind of like a far much worse and things and that. Okay, yeah. So the basically is this thing that they are putting a lot of input, even if they are kind of like a putting less, but they are putting a lot of input, but they didn't really get the output that much. Why? Because the conversion rate from kind of like a somebody worse to better, it takes time. It takes time, and there are a lot of things are responsible for became better. Not just a kind of like a somebody focus on school is not the only one thing, that there are so many factors actually involved and things and that. Okay, first of all, surrounding. Every student are actually kind of like a live from the surrounding. The thought process are actually kind of like a shifted from the surrounding point of perspective. So basically is this thing, even if the school are kind of like providing that much amount of essential thing, they will kind of like get the output of almost like a 10%. Let's just say is this thing that key they are putting like a 100% of the input, maybe less, but let's consume that 100% input. Okay, yeah, they will get the output of maybe 10 or 20%. 80% of the output just gone, just missing and things and that. Why? Because schools are just kind of like the problem is not just for teaching. Problem is that ki there are so many factors responsible to become better person, not just a kind of like a school, a personal development, exercise, kind of like a things that ki like there are multiples of education to financial education, sex education, and kind of like somebody how do we supposed to live the life and things and that shape their thought process. Okay, yeah, it takes time, effort, and implementation will happen very less, and also output should supposed to be always less. Okay, yeah. uh, in the city you might get output of almost like a 60% of the input that they are putting, but in village if you went, it goes to 20%. 20%, 80% of output just gone and things and that. So basically whatever they are kind of like putting the investment, they are not getting any kind of like a value in their like they need to get any kind of like a value, nothing really at all. So how do I supposed to fix that thing? How exactly is this thing? What exactly the solution for that? Solution is a Gurukul. Okay, yeah. Solution is that the student shouldn't supposed to be leave the school. Student should supposed to be stay in the school. Okay, yeah. They will not gonna go home, because let me tell you one thing that if the student is actually go home, then this problem will always gonna occur. Like even if I kind of like improve my school as much as better, this problem never gonna solve, because still as I mentioned there are multiple factors responsible for improving the people's student life or thought process things and that. There are a lot of things are actually kind of like responsible, so it does not. Okay, even if I provide everything, it does not gonna solve this problem. So what exactly is this thing? What exactly that? A student should supposed to be never leave the school. Okay, never leave the school. And Gurukul is a kind of like a really good example. A Gurukul is that a Gurukul where place where student will kind of like live there, eat together, learn together, kind of like a play together, everything together. Together means what? Like let's just say a Gurukul which has a capacity of 10,000 student. Okay, yeah. So 10,000 student are like basically let's just say that I build a Gurukul, okay, in the city, and I kind of like somebody like take a 100-kilometer diameter, and in the 100-kilometer diameter, whatever the kind of like students that I have since the age 10 to ahead, I will kind of like put that student, put it into the Gurukul. Okay, put it in the Gurukul. Okay, yeah. They will not gonna leave the Gurukul, nothing really at all. Leave the Gurukul means like they will kind of like somebody is this thing that in the weekend they can go to the parents and things and that, but they will not gonna go home. They will kind of like stay together, things were that and that. Now because of this thing, 10,000 students in one place, so that is called bigger responsibility. Okay, yeah. And when it has a bigger responsibility, then kind of like somebody government will kind of like focus on them to kind of like somebody making sure they are kind of like a really good everything, because they are kind of like staying there. They are not kind of like going home and things and that. So when they are staying together, you are the responsible for their sleep, better sleep, hostel, their food, their proper quality of education and things and that. In return, what you will gonna get? A government, what will gonna get? Their time. literally their time, and you are utilize their time to become better person. Okay, yeah, let me tell you one thing. In the morning they wake up, they go to the school. Okay, they will kind of like do the school and things and that and that. When they kind of like come to the hostel, you will have their time. Okay, like basically this thing, maybe school will never gonna end. Like let me tell you one thing, what is gonna happen. They come every morning, they kind of like somebody, every morning is a kind of like a very power hour. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna utilize that power hour for something much more better, like basically studying something much more critical subject or things and that and that and that. Okay, yeah, they will kind of like do the schooling from kind of like somebody from 8 a.m to kind of like somebody 1 p.m or 2 p.m. Okay, yeah, they will get the recess. By the way, they will get the recess of kind of like some food and things and that and that and that. Okay, let's just say that they kind of like came to the hostel at kind of like only 3 p.m. Okay, and when they kind of like came, they will have take a rest or things and that and that. They will kind of like do the study, or they will kind of like go to the library and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. Another thing is that in the 5 p.m or 6 p.m, they have to kind of like do the kind of like a physical workout or sports or things and that and that. They will kind of like do this kind of like some this stuff. Okay, yeah. For till kind of like a 7 p.m or 8 p.m, whatever. Okay, regarding about the coaches and things. And after the 8 p.m, they will also have their time to kind of like a study and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing, right now I don't really have any proper routine at the moment. Okay, but this is just an outlook of that routine. There are kind of like so much things are actually implemented. Like the Gurukul will kind of like making sure which student are kind of like really good at and things and that and that. And each student has a kind of like a different routine regarding about that. We are like a kind of like a things that what he kind of like a things and that, and what is actually finding excellence and things and that and that. There is a lot of stuff. Okay, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing now. If the student are kind of like living the Gurukul, and they are kind of like living the Gurukul for 24/7, I will have proper time to control their time. Like I will control their time, and I'm gonna make sure that their time are utilized for very much properly. Like basically is this thing now, I will kind of like tell lot of stuff. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing, the student I'll kind of like stay together now, then probably is this thing, I will shape their mind. I will shape their mind by kind of like somebody the guest lecture, or kind of like somebody like a kind of like do some activity or things or that or that on that and that. Instead of kind of like a teaching, try to teach a kind of like somebody much more kind of like somebody much more playful way or things and that ki students supposed to feel like that ki they are kind of like learning anything. No, kind of like somebody I kind of like teach them how do is supposed to be kind of like somebody play by learning. Okay, yeah, or things and that. There is a lot of movement. Okay, they will kind of like and as also is this thing, when the 10,000 students are kind of like live together, there is a couple of problems that I'm gonna solve it. Okay, one thing is that when the student are kind of like go to the school, sorry, go to the home, like in the school typical conventional, they go to the school and they will come home. Every student will kind of like a very proper different treatment. Different treatment means what? A student who kind of like live in the village, they might not get a kind of like something the opportunity to kind of like read a book, or kind of like somebody kind of like do something this and that. But the student who kind of like living the kind of like a city, they will kind of like all the amenities, like a good kind of like some environment, or kind of like somebody that ki like a better food or things and that. But in the Gurukul, 10,000 students will kind of like act as the same. There is no difference at all. There is no bias at all. Even if the rich people, poor people, they are kind of like somebody just stay there. All the students are kind of like somebody live there, and their credibility is actually judged by their talent, their effort, and things and that. Not just kind of like where they are came from and what is their parents, how much they rich they have. Okay, yeah. So this is what it is now, and basically what is actually is this? Now let me kind of like tell you. Your surrounding is actually influence your mind a lot, really a lot. So if I create that surrounding as much as better, as much as productive, as much as good, as much as kind of like somebody better and things and that, 10,000 student will kind of like get into that surrounding, and that surrounding implement their shape thought process, and they will kind of like somebody think very differently. They will kind of like somebody look as a life as an opportunity, and they will try to improve and things and that, because I tell that influence, and that influence is kind of like surrounded by 10,000 people, 10,000 students. So it just improve. It just like basically is this na ki education always been there in the Gurukul, always be in any kind of like activity or play or school or playground or school or library or anything at all. It always kind of like somebody they hold together, stick together, kind of like learn together. their surrounding is kind of like impact them a lot to kind of like a become better and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. And it changed their shapes and thought process. Okay, if you still not really understand, you might kind of like a realize something. Okay, yeah. A kind of like a somebody a kind of like a, let's just say kids. Okay, yeah. In the village, they are kind of like acting as a villagers, or they are kind of like a thinking as a villagers. Okay, yeah. Why is that? Because surrounding, because rest of the life they kind of like spend their life in the village, so they think from surrounding point of perspective. Example is this thing, their surrounding are kind of like a people who kind of like a somebody do a kind of like a gutka. Okay, yeah. So the student who are kind of like live in the village, higher possibility that they have that they will kind of like do the gutka or do the kind of like eating the gutka and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. Surrounding influence person na. Okay, yeah. So wrong surrounding kind of like create a wrong influence to that particular person, and that wrong influence create the kind of like shape the personality, and he will become a very crippled person even if he getting a really good school and things and that and that. But if that particular person in the Gurukul, that 10,000 students are influence each other because of like the effort that Gurukul actually providing to kind of like a better and things and that and that and that. I'm not saying that thing that ki influence will always gonna right. Sometime influence will gonna came wrong too. Let me tell you one thing. How? That ki probably in the Gurukul, some of the students are kind of like a try to drink smoking or alcohol or things and that and that. I will gonna make sure this will not gonna happen, because if something happened, like basically one fish will kind of like spoil the entire lake. So there is a lot of security over actually happen in the Gurukul. Okay, making sure this will not gonna happen. And if something happened like that, there is a kind of like a very proper punishment for that thing that it shouldn't supposed to be happen. Okay, yeah. So basically, if I do this thing, then probably in the 10,000 students, there are very less chances that they will kind of like get very bad influence regarding about the alcohol or smoking or things and that and that. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. This is what kind of like me Gurukul, what exactly is this thing. So basically the solution is not kind of like me giving them school, is actually funding regarding about how should they supposed to be improve their infrastructure and things like that. No, change their thought process, and that change the thought process actually came by Gurukul. Yeah. So this is what it is. This is what kind of like a thing. But still, Gurukul is also very big problem. Okay, yeah, because yeah, like a advantage definitely we're gonna get. I will shape their thought process and things and that. But still, implementation Gurukul, like basically I'm just saying 10,000 students. There are almost like a 700 million kind of like a students are there. 700 million. And if I kind of like a somebody like how much Gurukul should I supposed to build? Probably almost like if I make one Gurukul size of 20,000 student. Okay, 20,000 student, like do you understand? 20,000 student means like that local city population. Okay, so 20,000 student of each Gurukul, I have to make 20,000 or 10,000 Gurukul in all across the India. Okay, and it will gonna cost a lot. Probably the costing would be almost like $100 billion. $100 billion literally is this thing. Okay, a government should suppose to spend 10% of their GDP just for kind of like education. Okay, for building a Gurukul and things and that 10%. But after the 10 year, like after the 20 year, they shouldn't supposed to put that much amount of like after the 20, like basically just thing like if the government are execute a Gurukul program, so they have to put 10% of their GDP. That means $10 billion every single year for at least 20 years. And after a 20 year, that Gurukul will kind of like a somebody shining. Okay, then after that, Gurukul will gonna pump almost like $1 trillion per year in Indian economy, because they are kind of like creating those people as an asset, and that asset will kind of like become the kind of like boom. Okay, and they will kind of like simply impact on Indian economy $1 trillion per year, $1 trillion, and that graph will kind of like continuously improving and things like that. And as also is this thing, there is also another problem too. Another problem we're gonna solve. Okay, what kind of like a problem? Parents is kind of like they don't really have that much load for kind of like take care of their child. No, they don't really have their load, nothing really at all. Okay, so what is that happen? They will kind of like create more kids. Okay, yeah. The average kind of like a kids are actually making every parents are one, like literally one. Okay, yeah. Like basically, this is, I don't really found any kind of like a particular person who has a kind of like a two kids, just one kid. That's it, and that kind of like a decline the population. Decline the population is like most of people kind of consider as a growth. No, it's not growth. Okay, yeah, growth comes from the people. When not having the people, not having the growth. People are really essential. So basically, if the students are actually in the Gurukul, parents are allowed to make their more kids, probably 2 3 kids. So at least like a 2 3 kids are kind of like a, somebody create more kind of like assets. Though those people will kind of like go to the Gurukul, and after the 20 year they will kind of like a pump another $1 trillion in Indian economy and things and that they will become the asset. It's a kind of like a somebody machine that I wanted to create, and it just, yeah, it just growth. And oh my god, like, but it takes time. It takes a lot of amount of money. Gurukul program takes almost like $100 billion. But after it after it kind of like somebody like implement, boy oh boy, I cannot believe that they would gonna come. And when it gonna come, just like good, like basically just try to imagine, those Gurukul will kind of like create the such a soldier that just blows my mind. It's just like, oh my god, what they will gonna do. They just, okay, but still I shouldn't supposed to be look for that. Okay, if there is a kind of like a something actually good happen, there is something bad happen too, I have to look for that. Okay, Gurukul is just not just kind of like a cream layer of things. There are multiple factors too, but still, but there are long way to go home. There is so much stuff and things like that, and I don't know will it gonna implement or not or things like that. But if I try to imagine that world, oh my god, just blow my mind. All right, this is it. This end. Thank you.